All right, everybody, welcome to episode 150 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I am with the co-host with the most, Drew at DR underscore PRA. Drew, how you doing, man?
I'm tired, but I'm good. I'm excited to do this tonight.
I feel the same exact way. And before we get into all the festivities, 150 episodes, we didn't plan anything special because it is what it is. But uh, I want to thank, you know, kind of everybody involved with this because, it started with Bill and I at Super Duper Flex, in case you don't know, but you should by now. We did
Oh,
this thing for a little bit, and then Russ Fisher, the Dynasty Outhouse, reached out and said, "Hey, I'm starting a network. I want you guys to be a part of it." It was surreal getting a DM from somebody that I admired so much. So, we said yes. We've been on the DAP network. I don't even know how many episodes now. I think it's been like 120 something episodes on the DAP network. And, and obviously, you know, I want to thank you. You've been along now for, has it been a year? It feels like it's been a year.
yeah, it's been about
But
a year because I think Yumi and Bill did most of last season together.
yeah, so, uh, you know, definitely want to thank you because, I mean, without you and Bill, honestly, this show is just me yelling at clouds. And that could probably be somewhat entertaining, but I don't think it would have made 150 episodes of entertaining. So, you know, I want to thank you. I want to thank Bill. I want to thank Russ, everyone at the DAP network, because they've all been on here.
Yep,
Rocky, Scott, Andrew, Justin, Casey. I mean, we've had everybody, you know,
Bobby.
Bobby. We've had everybody, man, and they're all great. But last but not least, I want to thank every single person who has ever listened, tuned in to YouTube, downloaded us off of a podcast directory. Honestly, you guys are what make this so cool. Getting those questions in the chat each and every week is just so much fun because it's like, all right, didn't have time to prep for this. Let's see where it goes, and it always goes somewhere fun. So that's my little speech, and now we can get to the real show. Um, let's hit this with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, Drew, since people just heard a lot of my voice for the last minute and a half, why don't you start us off with your good, man?
Yeah, I'm going to have a theme here of going through teams for mine. So I'm going to start with the remaining undefeated team in the league, your hometown NFC East rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles. Last team standing. Saw a pretty cool graphic of a couple of your guys in the secondary here with some strong defensive numbers, lowest passer rating when thrown at. I think it's pretty low points scored. I forget what it was. The secondary stat was there, but pretty cool to see. You hear the old adage that defense wins championships, and it seems like that's a meaningful part of their team right now, even as they're still figuring out a little bit of how their offense runs. And it was interesting to see them win a different way this week without Jalen Hurts just absolutely balling out and being a fantasy stud. But yeah, something to be said about being the last 4-0 team there.
Yeah, and it's funny because obviously I live in this area, even though I'm not a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and someone brought up the fact that you know, the Eagles are 4-0, and I said, NFC East, best division in football. We got a 4-0 team. We got 2 3-1 teams. The Manders are there too. So somebody's always got to try to bring us down. But I mean, it's kind of funny. I say it joking around because I think the Eagles are legit. You know, the Giants have they've used the schedule to their advantage. Let's just say, uh, they kind of took um, Tennessee by surprise week 1. Then they play the Panthers, who, as we're starting to see throughout this season, I don't think are a very good team. Um, they lose to the Cowboys, and then they take care of the Bears last week, which again, I don't think is a very good team. But hey, I think Brian Daboll. I don't want to, I don't want to slam Bobby's favorite team after I spoke so highly of him earlier. Um, Brian Daboll is doing some good things there. Like they're winning games with Richie James and Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and you know whoever else is there. You know, uh, Wandell, who I think is their best receiver on the roster right now, hasn't played because of an injury or played very little in week 1. Uh, Kadarius Tony, my feelings about him, but he's probably their second best receiver, and he hasn't played a whole lot. So to win with guys like that and the Daniel Bellingers of the world, obviously Saquon is a huge reason. Saquon looks like Saquon of old. And yeah, health is a part of that, but I also think part of that is coaching and an offensive scheme and understanding what you have. Um, so I think while they may not be a talent-rich team right now, I think they got a good coach in place. Former Buffalo Bill offensive coordinator. I'll get that shout out in there for you, Drew. Um, I think he's making some good strides with that team. So, I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles keep coming together like they are. The Cowboys defense keeps playing at an elite level, and the Giants make some moves that the NFC East could be kind of one of those divisions where you got a few good teams. They're all going to kind of beat each other up, and whoever comes out of it alive is going to be a headache in the playoffs. So I like that one as your good for this week. I chose Jared Goff. Not gonna lie, not a name I thought I would say in 2022 in the good category, but honestly, it kind of should be like in the great category if we had one of those. Last week alone, he goes 26 for 39, 378 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't know if you've looked at the show sheet. You probably have. But do you know where he is right now in fantasy on the season for quarterbacks? You're muted.
My bad.
Yeah.
After that game, oh, yep. My guess was top 3 before I saw the show sheet.
Okay. So QB5.
Yeah.
If I would have told you before the season started, Drew, I'll make you a bet that at some point in the season, Jared Goff will be QB5. You probably would have taken that bet. You probably would have been like, Jared Goff is Jared Goff. He's a middle of the road quarterback. That's what he's going to be the entire season, a middle. And who knows? By the time week 17 ends, we might be sitting on here talking, oh, remember when Jared Goff was QB5, he ended QB17. But I don't think he is. I don't think he stays QB5. But that offense has been gunning. And by the way, Jared Goff did this last week with no Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yep.
No DeAndre Swift. The Josh Reynolds.
Chark was out.
Yeah, Chark with the Josh Reynolds of the world were peeking their head. I mean, obviously, it was a massive dose of T.J. Hawkinson for you, but I mean, Jared Goff, man, that's my good from week
Yeah,
2.
he's a guy. If we go back a couple of months, I think when Bill was on here, we are getting into the hard knocks weeks, and I think Bill was talking about trying to maybe sneak a couple trades in for Goff earlier before they got things rolling, based on some of what he saw and what he's hearing from some of the Detroit folks there. So if you're able to do that, if you listened a couple months ago and you maybe followed Bill's lead there, hopefully you came out in a pretty good spot here, because chances are you made a pretty sweet deal to get him at this point. And then who knows what you could do with him now? Maybe you could even trade him away again and get some better value back, or something that you feel like is going to be more consistent. But for the first few weeks, anyways, right? The Lions are just putting up points like it's nobody's business. They are, what I can tell, they're the highest scoring team. They're also allowing the most points. So this is a beautiful, beautiful combination. I feel like this is like the Falcons and the NFC South of 5, 6, 7 years ago, where that division just really didn't play much defense at all, and you knew that everything was going to be a shootout. So Detroit looks good, and it's really crazy to see where even Seattle and that offense, and is how impotent they've seemed so far this year, and what kind of a game that turned out to be. But yeah, Goff at this point, if you got him early, good for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly can't believe it, but you know what? While I sit here in awe of Jared Goff, why don't you tell us what your bad was from week 4?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it already. The Bears here. We talked about Justin Fields last week, and this organization just continuing to suck it up this year. But even worse, losing to the Giants only had two active quarterbacks, I think, this week, and both of them went down. And you have Saquon playing out of the Wildcat for what was the last couple of drives
Yeah.
here, and still winning it. And I think some of that does speak to the go for it mentality that Dable's brought. I think week 1, right, there was an opportunity where maybe he could have gone for a field goal, but instead they went, or they could have gone for the extra point, but they went for 2.
2.
So playing to win, right? So that mentality is definitely shining through. But come on, Bears.
Listen, it's actually comedic that they're 2-2. I mean, they beat the 49ers in the monsoon game week 1. You know, they get stomped by Green Bay. Can't even remember who their other win was against now. But
Nope.
I mean, that's what they are. They're forgettable. It's just you see a Justin Fields, and for like 30 seconds, I just want to make this comparison. We saw two quarterbacks from last year's draft massively struggle in their rookie season. Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields both get new head coaches. Jacksonville keeps their GM, even though it's not really sure how much power he really has. Chicago gets a whole new GM. And what does Jacksonville do? Jacksonville goes out. They spend a ton of money to get Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. They get the dude from Washington on the offensive line. I'm blanking on his name right now. But they get offensive line help. They draft 2 studs on defense in the first round of the draft. And they really make a concerted effort not only to help Trevor Lawrence on the offensive side of the ball, but they do get him some defensive help. What does Chicago do? Chicago, they don't really make any big waves in free agency. They really go kind of defense heavy with the premium picks that they had in this year's draft, and they're leaving Justin Fields out to dry. It's kind of a shame, but that was probably longer than 30 seconds, so my apologies. But I just wanted to make that kind of connection because I don't know why this team does not like Justin Fields. But It is what it is. All right, my bad for this week. I'm keeping with my quarterback theme. Marcus Mariota, 7 for 19, 139 yards. But don't worry, he ran the ball 5 times. You think that's got to be good, right? He runs it 5 times. What does that get you? 20, 25 yards. He ran it 5 times. He gained 3 yards. But here's the kicker: his longest run was 8 yards. So the other four rushes netted -5 yards. Put that into context.
And that wasn't because he was in victory formation at the end of the day.
No, 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 no. No. I don't even know if Atlanta has that play in their playbook. Let's be honest. I don't even think they have the kneel down to end the game. More like Marcus Scariota. You damn right, Dynasty Scissor. It is more like Marcus Scariota. Um, they Atlanta's a bad team, man. Uh, I'm gonna go on like a 15-second rant, and I am gonna keep it 15 seconds. They figured out how to use Drake London and have not figured out how to use Kyle Pitts. I don't even know how that's humanly possible. They knew how to do it last year. They get one receiving weapon and then they forget. All right, go ahead. Um, do what you gotta do, Atlanta. But all right, Drew. Let me throw it back to you for the ugly here. Who was your ugly from week 4?
We've covered this team before, I think, already in this short 4 weeks. The Rams, Monday Night Football, 3 field goals is all they could muster. It was pretty painful to watch them, and I think Stafford threw one touchdown, and it happened to be to San Francisco. Otherwise, his stat sheet was pretty empty. Couldn't get the ball moving, running. Cup did Cooper Cup things, but there's only so much that Cooper Cup can do. Kept him out of the end zone this week. A Rob had a shot in the end zone and couldn't get that connection. So, um, yeah, it's just not coming together at this point. Whether it's that Super Bowl hangover or whatever it is here, but to see Jimmy G, and he had a couple of bonehead moves there during the game, and still, their defense bailed them out of it, and ultimately Jimmy G didn't lose the game, which is all they needed him to do. Jeff Wilson had a good game, and Debo is that dude. Um, but yeah, would have expected more out of the defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, and this will be interesting to watch throughout the season because if they continue to play like they are for the rest of the season, it's gonna have to be one of the biggest kind of falls from graces in the period of a year. Going from Super Bowl champs, they did have their ups and downs last year. It wasn't all dominant play, and obviously they put it together in the playoffs. But I mean, this team doesn't even remotely remember the team that we watched play last year. I mean, even in games where they didn't look great, they were scoring points, and they're just not scoring points. And we thought, all right, Allen Robinson got paid a big amount of money. They're going to use him a lot. And now it's the Cooper Cup and Tyler Higbee show. I heard a stat, and I haven't uh, checked this, so it could be slightly wrong, that Tyler Higbee has the most targets at the tight end position this year. No offense. You have Cooper Cup who gets a million targets, so that's just a given. But you sign Allen Robinson and pay him, I think he's getting paid like 30 or 40 million guaranteed, and he's your third option. And the person who's ahead of him is
Yeah.
is Tyler Higbee.
Yep. A Rob's on a $42 million contract with almost 31 guaranteed. Tyler Higbee has 38 targets to Mark Andrews' 36 to Tyler Kelsey's 34.
So, I mean, I don't get it. I understand the running game is kind of a shambles right now, but how how Tyler Higbee is getting more targets than Allen Robinson. And unfortunately, I did watch some of that game, but I'm not gonna lie, I went to sleep early. It did not look like it was going to be an exciting game. So I don't know, man. Maybe Allen Robinson is just done. But if he is, man, you just paid that guy over 30 million guaranteed just to find out he's done.
Yep.
All
And
right.
Kyle Pitts sitting here at 22, number 11 behind David Njoku at number 10, Darren Waller at number 9, Gerald Everett, former Los Angeles Ram, at number 8, Tyler Conklin at number 7, and then the list goes on.
Wow. Man, tight end is a crazy position. You hear just about everybody in the community say, "Go get you some, get you one of the elite guys early, so you don't regret it." And this is the reason why, because
Yep.
unless you strike it, unless you strike, your Gerald Everett's and your Tyler Conklin. So I have heard people throughout the offseason say, "Hey, use a pick on this guy. You don't have to use a crazy pick, but and see what happens, or you could get sucked into like I did in a few leagues into the Cole Kmet hype and Cole, you probably can't even find Cole Kmet on that sheet, so I'm not going to make you look for him. But all right, let me hit it with my ugly here. Julio Jones, he was back. We were like, all right, Julio. We saw Julio in that first game against the Cowboys. Oof, he was looking good, man. He was looking like the Julio of old, and then the usual Julio stuff happens, but now he's back with Tom Brady and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Okay, all those guys are out there. They can't key in on Julio. He'll be fine. What are you thinking? Maybe 4 for 48 and a touchdown, something like that, just to make you happy. One reception for 7 yards. That's all I have to say. I'm not going to break it down. It was one reception for 7 yards. That's ugly. That is ugly. No matter how you break it down, that is ugly. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly for week 4. And now the main event, what we love the most, what we do the best. This is what we saw on the timeline. All right, this first one here is from Tommy Blair at FF Tommy B. What are some of the big bets you're making with your teams on a midseason bump in value or production? Um, I'll go first here. I wrote down the Jags number 2 receiver. I cheated a little bit, but Zay Jones played the first 3 weeks of the season, and his stat line from those 3 weeks: 19 receptions, 173 yards, and a touchdown. That's pretty good for a number 2 receiver. I mean, you're talking about 6 receptions and just about 60 yards a game. That's not too bad. It's not too bad for a especially in a PPR league. That's 12 points average a week. It's not too bad. And I'm talking about he's a wide receiver 2 on his own team. And then last week we saw Zay Jones was hurt. Jamal Agnew stepped into that role. And on the season, Jamal Agnew is 6 receptions for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, both touchdowns occurred when he got that Zay Jones role against the Eagles. We talked about the Eagles a little bit earlier. So if you put those guys together, that's 27 receptions, 246 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's pretty good coming out of that wide receiver 2 position for Jacksonville. So,
It is.
and I think a lot of people aren't talking about Zay Jones. I feel like Zay Jones is still kind of thought about as Zay Jones from like the beginning of last year, where he wasn't really doing anything. But if you kind of look at the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season last year when he was with Las Vegas, and what he's done so far this season, you could do a lot worse at, your wide receiver 3 or your flex play there. Um, and if Zay Jones is hurt for any period of time, I mean, Jamal Agnew against a very good defense has shown that he can kind of get some things done himself. So that's kind of who I would bet on. As we were talking, mid-season about guys that we may want to go out and get to, bolster a contender that maybe we don't have to pay as much for as some of the other more obvious names. Your Stephon Diggs, your Devontae Adams, players like that, where it's obvious that they're going to be big time producers, but it's also obvious that you're going to have to pay up a lot if you want to get them on your team. Uh, Drew, did you have one for this one?
Yeah, I'm looking through a couple lists here, and I like that call on the wide receiver side of things. We mentioned him already, Gerald Everett. I'm curious what it would take for people to get him still. I think a lot of folks that have him are probably wanting to get out while the getting is relatively good. I think some people might be expecting that bottom to fall out or that other shoe to drop at any point. But talking about a guy that's tied to, arguably top three quarterback in the league at this point, and a team that has Keenan Allen in and out of the lineup. We know what Mike Williams is typically season to season for playing time and getting dinged up here and there. It was great to see Austin Eckler turn it on the last week or two. But in that division, you're always going to be looking for points in those games. So looking at the tight end position, especially if you play, maybe if you're in a premium, it's a little bit harder, but he's definitely a guy. Similarly with Tyler Conklin, I'm curious to see where that goes. I think some folks are wondering, was that just a Joe Flacco thing, or is Zach Wilson really going to support that? But out of those two, I don't know. They have to pay a lot more to get to Gerald Everett. And then as far as I'm looking at kind of down the running back list here, and we've talked about Nick Chubb is last week we went a little deep dive into running backs, but Kareem Hunt's still around, and his average points per game in PPR league is still double digits. And while Nick Chubb is still dominating and scoring the touchdowns, Hunt is that guy that's still aging. Maybe you're able to get him a little bit cheaper to add some depth. If you were, a DeAndre Swift team, a Jonathan Taylor team, maybe you missed out on Mike Boone on waivers this week, or a couple other guys that maybe you felt like you should have been able to get cheaper. So he's a guy I come back to every season wondering what it takes to get him.
I like that one, and it's funny. So, what does it cost you to get Gerald Everett? Probably before the season, you could have got him for a ham sandwich. Now, you probably have to put a fancy piece of lettuce on that sandwich, a little bit of mayonnaise, maybe throw in a bag of chips on the side. I still don't think Gerald Everett is going to be expensive because, you know, everyone is waiting for the bottom to drop out on Gerald Everett. He's really never had a run like this before. Um, and people are probably saying, well, what happens when Keenan Allen comes back? What happens when they finally figure out that Austin Eckler should be a little bit more involved in the passing game? This is all going to come out of Gerald Everett. But I mean, even if you look at that Chiefs game a couple weeks ago, the reason why the Chargers lost that game is because Gerald Everett was trying to get himself pulled out of that game because he was just gassed. He needed a couple minutes to breathe on the sideline, and they kept him on the field, and then they threw to him. And obviously, he couldn't run the complete route. The ball gets picked. It's a pick six. It goes back. But that's how much they want to keep him involved. A guy who was literally begging to get off the field because he was gassed. They told him no and then threw to him. I mean, that's crazy. And I think even when Keenan Allen comes back and, you can talk about Austin Eckler, I just think they want him involved. They want him catching passes. They want him down there in the red zone catching touchdowns. And, you know, I'm not saying anything past 2022, but for 2022, if you're trying to find a cheaper play at tight end on a contender, you can do a lot worse than Gerald Everett. Trust me, I can give you names. Yeah, we talked about Cole Kmet last year and how he has less receptions than third string tight ends on teams. So, um, I
Yeah.
like that one. I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
DLF Trade Finder right now has him going for a second. A 23 second is what I think probably in some of these TE premium leagues. There's some packages of him and a third for a second.
yeah,
Um,
like
him and a third for a 23 and 24 second.
I don't think
So
I don't, and honestly, this is not going to be every league, but I don't even think you need to pay a second. Like you said, Gerald Everett and a third for a second. Okay, so you're
yep.
getting Gerald Everett and you're getting the third.
Yep.
Cool. You know what I mean? That third can
Yep. You're
turn
backing
into
up around.
right. And
Yep.
honestly, that third, if you're, if you're trading as much as we try to, that third is getting thrown into another deal to get somebody else. So
Yeah.
um it's not even like we're keeping that third around, for the entire season. But yeah, Gerald Everett, that's a great name. I like that name a lot. So there you go, Tommy. I hope that helps you out. Um, let's pivot a little bit. We got a question in the chat, so let's throw this one up here from our man Dynasty Scissor. All right, for later on the show, later is now. Scissor, flex question for you guys: Amari Cooper versus the Chargers, or Robert Bobby Trees Woods versus the Washington Cobra Commanders. I don't even think they deserve a great nickname like Cobra Commanders, but we'll give it to them for this question only. All right, Drew. Um, I'll start this one off. It might be crazy, but I think I'm going with Bobby Trees here. Traylon Burks has turf toe. Kyle Phillips is still not back. Like, what are they going to do in the passing game? Like where else are they going? And that's my honest to God question.
Mm.
Where else are they going? Uh Nick Westbrook Akine? Maybe. But what's that? What's that? Two receptions for 22 yards? I assume they're gonna throw for more than 22 yards in that game. So I think Robert Woods is gonna get a lot of the target share. And we've seen the Commanders just really get thrown all over. I mean, they they beat the Jags, but Trevor Lawrence had a pretty good game minus the interception at the end that sealed it for the Commanders. We saw Dallas throw all over them. We saw Philly, I mean, just light them on fire. That was like, I mean, the varsity versus the JV. That wasn't even fun. And we saw Detroit get out to a big lead against them. So they give up a ton of points. They're not really secure in the pass game. So yeah, give me Robert Woods, and I'll take that all day. What's your thoughts on this, Drew?
Oh, this is tough. I see where you're coming from with Woods and being the option. I think he's a safer play. Cooper is still, I think, your high potential guy. If you're hoping to hit on a boom week for him, where he could hit 100 yards, touchdown or two. If you're looking to maximize because maybe you've got a bunch of other safe players, floor type guys, then I'd probably go Cooper there. If you're looking to just get a good shot at double digit points and maybe a touchdown, yeah, playing the Commanders is a very, very attractive matchup. Chargers ideally should be a decent matchup, if they're chasing points, but um, yeah, I think if I feel pretty good about having some boom bust plays in other positions, uh, maybe at quarterback, you got somebody. I'm trying to think of who we'd have at running back. It would even be boom bust. Maybe you've got Saquon there that you're expecting to do really, really well, but depending on how that matchup goes, he could be a little bit lower. Maybe you want the floor of Robert Woods. So it really depends on what you're looking at for that flex spot. But I think for the consistency, I could definitely see going with Woods because nobody likes looking at 1.7 points on their roster.
And that's kind of what I was looking at. Like Robert Woods, the last 3 weeks has had 4 receptions in each week. Now, Amari Cooper, week 2, 9 for 101 and a touchdown. Week 3, 7 for 101 and a touchdown. Those are great weeks. Week 1 against the Panthers, 3 for 17. Last week against the Falcons, 1 for 9. I mean, you're like Bobby Woods is not sexy. I mean, you're kind of hoping for the touchdown to really kind of shoot you up a little bit. But except for week 1 where Robert Woods went 1 for 13, he he's been consistent. And my thing is that, man, it seems like the really bad matchups is where Cooper struggles. I
Yeah.
mean, the Panthers shouldn't be a team that you should fall apart against. We've seen them play. They're not good. The defense is fine, but they're not an elite defense. 3 for 17. The Falcons. The Falcons. 1 for 9? Come on. Come on. So that's my concern. So I think Drew summed it up best though. It all depends on you know, how you build your teams. I always, or build your starting lineups, I should say. I always try to err on the side of getting for sure points in my lineup. Um, and the boom bust guys, I try not to play if I can avoid it. Uh, but if you're in a situation where maybe you have a lot of just high floor guys that you know are going to score you a good amount of points, maybe you throw Cooper in there and just hope he has one of his 8 for 100 and a touchdown days and
Mhm.
not one of his 1 for 9 or 3 for 17 days. But that's a good question. That's kind of a thought exercise there, and I like those. So thank you, Scissor. Our next one here is from friend of the show, Coast to Coast Dynasty Mercer at CSC Dynasty Merce. What are the top 10 wide receivers in your humble opinion? So we did not both make top 10 lists because I wanted to make a top 10 list and then have Drew dissect it and see what he likes and what he does not like. Drew is the cool, calculated, uh, mental, cerebral player, and I just like saying wild and incendiary things to get people going. So we'll see if my top 10 list reflects that. All right, so at 1, Justin Jefferson. Yeah, yeah, he had a couple of slow weeks there. We all got worried. We all, oh my God, what's happening? He's fine. We saw that in London. He's fine. Uh, Number 2, Cooper Cup. Listen, I was standing on my soapbox saying Cooper Cup can't do what he did last year. It was an insane year. He was the Triple Crown winner. They're not going to do that. Well, he's getting the targets again. So at this point, I mean, it seems like Matthew Stafford only has eyes for Cooper Cup
Mhm.
and then some secondary receiver. Last year it was Robert Woods until he got hurt. Then it was like a game or two of Van Jefferson, and then it was Odell Beckham. This year it seems to be Tyler Higbee for whatever reason. I'm still not getting that, but it is what it is. And that's it. So it's Cooper Cup first. If he's triple covered, like he should be on every play, then there's the second guy. And so I think as long as Matt Stafford's in town, Cooper Cup's going to keep doing what he's doing. So I'm going to put him at number 2. At number 3, Jamar Chase. He was my number 1. I went to war for him uh, against the Justin Jefferson at one players, there's been a little bit of a step back, and I think that's more of an offensive scheme thing as opposed to Jamar Chase not being good. But like I said, I kind of explained why I have the other two ahead of him. T. Higgins being a stone cold stud doesn't help either. Neither one of the first two guys has that like for sure stud next to them. So he drops down to three. Number four, this might be where it gets a little controversial. CeeDee Lamb. Remember when we buried him after week one? He wasn't good no more. Sell him for what you could get for him. All he needed was a little rush, man. A little Cooper rush to get him going. Um, he's been good. Yeah, does he drop balls? Absolutely. He drops balls that he really has no business dropping, but he can get he can get you vertical. He can get you on a slant and he can just be by you. And you don't even realize it until you're like, wait a minute, he's not there anymore. And he's about, 7 yards separated. He's catching the ball and he's running it in for a touchdown. I think Amari Cooper being out of there has helped them a lot.
Mhm.
I think the fact that Cooper Rush being a backup and logically looking at his team and going, okay, who should I be throwing the ball to? Oh, this guy, CeeDee Lamb, he's really good. Let's do that. We'll see what happens when Dak gets back. Dak likes to spread it around a little bit more. I think Cooper Rush is doing a fine job of spreading it, but Dak is much more trying to get everybody involved. We'll see if maybe Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore sit down with him and say, hey, like do what Cooper Rush is doing and just, try to get CeeDee Lamb involved as much as humanly possible. Um, Number five, NFC East rival, AJ Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles. I was unsure about what the on-field chemistry was going to be. Yes, I know they were best friends, and AJ Brown is Jalen Hurts' kid's godfather or something like that. I mean, they were. I think AJ Brown was the best man at Jalen Hurts' wedding. They're really close, and I got that. But being friends and having on-field chemistry are two different things, and I didn't know how that was going to work out at the start of the season. I mean, game one, I think AJ Brown had 160 yards and a touchdown or something like that. So obviously, they're on the same page. The team is very good. We've seen a a jump by Jalen Hurts, and not even so much. I don't think he's still an elite passing quarterback by any means, but he's playing the game in a more efficient way, which I think is really helping out that entire team. So, AJ Brown obviously is going to be there for a while. He just signed a big old contract extension, so he's going to be paired up with Jalen Hurts. Barring something crazy happening. So I like that at number five. Number six, Buffalo Bills represent Drew. Stephon Diggs. Let's face it. It was it's going to be Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And Stephon Diggs said, I mean, you do whatever you want, Gabe Davis. I'm just going to go out here and dominate. And that's pretty much what he's done all season. Um, you know, then it was, well, maybe Isaiah McKenzie can step up. Maybe Khalil Shakir can step up. Maybe this guy can. Maybe Dawson Knox will step up. And Josh Allen says, no, Stephon Diggs is my boy, and he's going to keep getting fed. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And for the next 2 or 3 years, I don't see anything changing that. So I'm going to stick with Stephon Diggs. He's older, yes, but can he give you 2 to 3 years of production? I think he can.
Mhm.
Another old guy, Devontae Adams. Vegas not doing good record wise, but that's not because Devontae Adams isn't getting the ball. He's getting targets. He's pretty much doing everything he did in Green Bay, except he's doing it in Vegas with Derek Carr. So I have him at 7. At 8, Jalen Waddle. Man, that Miami offense, and we'll see what happens. It's Tua's out for at least this week. We'll see what happens moving forward with that. But Jalen Waddle, He does have Tyreek Hill on the other side, but he was good last year too. And I don't want people to forget that. Like, well, he just broke out now because Tyreek Hill is there. No, he was pretty good last year too. Um, he could take it to the house on any play, which is obviously a good thing if you own a guy in Dynasty. So that is my 8. Number 9, Michael Pittman. This is kind of, I mean, he's had I think he's had one, maybe two good games this season, but this is you know, hoping that Indianapolis stops playing the old quarterback carousel and just drafts a guy or trades for, a younger guy, something like that where, they can they can get somebody in there and really unlock Michael Pittman. And I don't know if 9 Michael Pittman is controversial, but I think this one will be controversial for some people. At 10, Drake London. I dogged on Drake London during the offseason. I'm going to sit here, I'm going to raise my hand, and I'm going to admit to what I said. But Drake London has made Kyle Pitts irrelevant. And I don't think that's because Kyle Pitts isn't supremely talented. And I'm not saying that's because Arthur Smith is supposed to be an offensive guy and can't figure out how to use 2 really good pass catchers. But he walked in and just became the number 1 guy. We thought it was going to take him a little bit of time. We thought he was going to, growing pain. And this is what Marcus Mariota, by the way. If Atlanta ends up with a top 5 pick and they get one of these quarterbacks that are supposed to be coming out in this 23 draft, what? You telling me Will Levis or Bryce Young can't unlock a little bit more than Marcus Mariota? I think they can. So that's my top 10. Drew, thoughts? It could be anything, likes, dislikes. Who did I miss? Who's too high, too low?
Overall, I like it. I am not a Cooper Cup top 2 guy. I think because of the age and because of what we've seen from Matthew Stafford, I think he'll give you the floor because of all those targets. The question marks will be in scoring. I know touchdowns are not easy to predict, right? And again, we're expecting some regression from last year. It's hard for me not to put one of the younger guys up there who has had a really good first and second year. So I think value-wise, you're still getting top 2 value from Jamar Chase. So if you agree with Josh and you're comfortable with what you can get out of Cooper Cup for the next couple of seasons, then you could take Jamar Chase and probably get a good bit on top with that. Be able to reload a little bit next year, maybe even the year after that. So Cup for me is probably he and Devontae Adams are going to be pretty close, middle of the pack, maybe like a 5, 6, 6, 7 group there for me. Hard not to. We talked about him earlier just for a second. Hard not to have Debo in the top 10, knowing how explosive he is and how many ways they can get him the ball. So for me, he's one that I would be looking at. I'm looking at DLF's top 10 right now, which is kind of wild to see a couple of those duos, right? We have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. You mentioned Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So we've got a couple of teammates that are in the top 10, which is crazy to see some of the talent on some of these teams. I do think if you're going to put some of the older guys in there, I do think Stephon Diggs belongs, quite frankly, ahead of Cup and Devontae for me. Maybe they're 5, 6, 7, knowing that he's got Josh Allen on that offense. A lot more confidence in Allen. I think Derek Carr is underrated, probably. So Devontae has a little bit more security there than maybe people thought originally, watching the drop off from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. I love CeeDee Lamb in the top 5. I should have made a push to get more of him in the last couple of weeks. Now they just had a couple of good weeks. That cost has rebounded pretty significantly. AJ Brown, who he's another one. We'll see how that works out between him, and it seems like a little bit of a carousel here between him. Devonta Smith had a huge week a couple of weeks ago. Dallas Goedert still getting some reasonable targets there. Wild to see what's happened to Miles Sanders as a side note. Seeing him finally score in a long time and be productive. But Yeah, it's tough to fit top 10. Top 12, I think you can make a lot more rearrangements here. Michael Pittman at 9 was pretty aggressive. Um, he's probably one that I would like to see in that group, but based on some of the guys that are around him, it would be tough to say. And that's the tough part too, is that wide receiver after a certain point here, after a couple of the first two tiers maybe, it's so interchangeable. It could be depending on your team makeup, depending on your scoring setup, depending on what type of league you have, if you have, contracts involved and stuff. But DK is another guy that I think is undervalued at this point still. Pretty wild to see some of the comparisons between Russ and Gino through the first few games. I think somebody put a graphic up today of the Broncos last year with Gino for the first few games, right? Compared to where they are with Russ this year. And then, I love some of the swagger that Gino's got to his game right now. A couple of the one-liners in the post-game interviews that he's had. But yeah, DK is a guy that I have a hard time not having right around that top 10 too. So Drake London, I was curious if you'd have anybody from this year's rookie class up there with how some of the guys have shown out. So I think Drake London's pretty bold. It seems like he could absolutely fit in the top 10. So I like that. I like Garrett Wilson. I like Olave, and depending again on how some of those quarterback situations work out, these guys could either shoot right up in the top 5 or 6, or they might hover in that 7 to 15 range perpetually for the next couple of years. So again, some of this is reading your team, or I'm sorry, not your team, but your league mates, and see where you can find some of those inefficiencies and value. And maybe you do have a Cooper Cup that somebody wants for that floor, and you're willing to live with the up and down of a Drake London while they sort that quarterback situation out, plus a little bit for next year. I guess that's kind of my question for you when you look at the values here, Josh. So you have Cooper Cup as your number 2 wide receiver. When we go down toward the bottom of your top 10, what do you need to add to Drake London to get you to move Cooper Cup off your team?
So I guess it depends on the team. If I am rebuilding and I have a Cooper Cup on my team, first of all, I not sell him sooner. But you know, I would need Drake London. I'm gonna cost you like Drake London a first and a second, because if if we're looking right now at half point PPR, Cooper Cup is number one again, according to Fantasy Pros. Now every league is different. There's different things with scoring, but just your standard vanilla half point PPR, Cooper Cup is in first, and he's 5 points ahead of Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
So pretty much a point a game ahead of number 2. Not a ton. That can be made up easily throughout the season, obviously. But it just kind of shows, and the reason why I was surprised when I put Cooper Cup at number 2, because he's old. That's the thing. He's old. What is he, 29?
I think
I
he'll
think
be 29 this year.
he's 29
Nope,
already.
he is.
He's 29 already.
Ancient.
So obviously, we're talking dynasty here. What do we want? We want 24, 25-year-olds. That's what we want. But this thing, whatever we want to call it, between Matt Stafford and Cooper Cup, where he looks at Cooper Cup as the first read, the second read, and sometimes even the third read on a lot of plays, is continuing. And I think Matthew Stafford's going to be there for another 2 years. So I think this is going to continue for another 2 years. Will he be number 1 in each and every one of those years? No. Will he be 2? Probably not. But besides injury, I don't see a way where he falls out of the top 5 with the amount of targets he's getting. I don't. And that is when I look at my list, Justin Jefferson, I think is a guy who really can't fall out of the top 5. Minus injury. Jamar Chase, if if a real offensive coach, not Zach Taylor, ever comes in there and says, "Wow, I have Jamar Chase and T Higgins," and gets T Higgins just a little bit more involved, because T Higgins is still pretty involved in that offense. I mean, that's going to siphon from Jamar Chase, and they have Joe Mixon. There are mouths to feed in that offense, and Jamar Chase is supremely talented, but you could see a couple 6-7 seasons from him because T. Higgins just got a little bit more involved. I hated, by the way, talking about T. Higgins, I hated leaving him out of the top 10. I really wanted to try to squeeze him in there, but these guys just, they're either elite talents or they're the only talent on their team. And that's always going to cap T. Higgins, is the fact that Jamar Chase is there, and I just talked about Joe Mixon. And so there's always going to be a lot of mouths to feed. And unfortunately, he's not the most talented wide receiver on that team. He would be the most talented wide receiver on quite a few teams, but on this one, he's not. So that's what kept him out of the top 10 for me. But I knew things were going to be a little. That's why I thought it would be cool if I made the list, because, like I said, you're very cool and calculated, and I like to be a little bit more boisterous sometimes about my thoughts and my feelings about how I look at the fantasy game. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, but this was one that was fun for me to do. All right, so before we get into the rest of the timeline, let's go to the game of the week. So, Drew, we were pretty good last week. We were 2-1.
Not bad.
2-1. Unfortunately, the pick we gave on the show was our one loss. Pittsburgh. It's Pittsburgh, man. I don't even know at this point what they're doing. They lost to the Jets. Go team. So on the season, I'm starting to keep track of this now. 6-3-1. So not doing too bad. We're not doing too bad. We got two wins for every loss. So that's a good one. So this week, Indy fans, I'm not picking on your team. I swear I'm not picking on your team, because this is the third time they've been a pick of the week. We got it right when Jacksonville trounced them. We got them wrong when they pulled the upset on the Chiefs. So according to that back and forth, we're gonna get it right this time when we throw Indy into the mix. Indy at Denver, the Thursday night special. Denver -3. They're the favorite. So listen to this. Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Colts are 32nd in points per game. Drew, can you just remind everybody how many teams are in the NFL?
I think it's like 48, right?
You sure about that? You might want to fact check that.
Hold on, let me check the Googles here.
Google that. We'll hold here while Drew Googles how many teams are in the NFL.
In fact, I was wrong, Josh. I don't get to say this a lot, but I was wrong. There are 32.
And they're 32nd. That's not good. That's not good. And by the way, the majority of their offensive output was while Jonathan Taylor was healthy. He's been ruled out for Thursday's game. So the team that scores the least amount of points is going to be missing their biggest offensive weapon. That's not good. I don't care who you are. That's not good. I don't know how they score points. And don't get me wrong, the Broncos have not been an offensive juggernaut this year. They haven't. We thought Russ was going to cook. That man can't even get Uber Eats right now. That's how bad he's been. He can't Postmates. He's having trouble just turning on the oven for a frozen pizza. It's bad right now. But he's got weapons. He does. Russ has weapons. He does. I know it sounds funny. They lost Javonte. I get that. broke my heart. Nobody loved Javante more than me, but they still have Jerry Judy. They still have Cortland Sutton, who's getting like a 33% target share on that team. You know, they got the KJ Hamlers of the world. Alberto is still running around. Melvin Gordon, if he can hold on to the damn ball, is decent. They just signed Latavius Murray, who looked good in that London game. So they have pieces, and I think they have enough pieces to win this game by 3. So Indy has to fly to Denver, mile high. We always hear about the altitude and how that affects people and all that. So I just think a lot of things stack up against Indy. They lose this game by at least 3 points. And, just remember, if you're going to put money on some of these games, use BetUS. We're going to throw a link in the comments after this post so that you can click. They always have deals going on, and they change a lot, but it's always like put in 100, get 125, get 50 free dollars. They're always doing something. So when you join, you're pretty much always going to get something. Right now they have $125 sign up bonus. Like, don't you want that? Don't you want to put in $100 and then they just throw you 125 to bet with? I mean, just think it. If you bet, if you bet with us, that 125 could have turned into a little bit more money for you. We're 6-3-1. And by the way, I'll talk about the other winners for a second. We told you to take Vegas. They won outright. That was in the FTC, the Fantasy Timeline chat, and we throw a special one in just for those guys and gals every week, just as a thank you for being in the chat. The chat is always fun. There's trade questions. There's start sit questions. There's everything in there. So again, if you want to be a part of the FTC, just hit me up at Real Fantasy TL. Hit Drew up at dr_PRA, or hit us up at Fantasy Timeline and say, hey, I want to be part of the Fantasy Timeline chat, the FTC. We'll throw you right in there. And just for the bets alone, even if you're just trying to win a little extra cash in your pocket, we've been actually pretty good with our timeline bets too. So and then obviously our Sunday morning special, we told you guys to take the Chargers -7 against the vaunted Houston Texans, and it looked a little shaky there for a minute. It looked like we were going to take the L on that one, but Austin Eckler, with one of his 47 touchdowns in that game, came through and gave us the dub. So yeah, that again, BetUS. We're gonna put our link in there in the comments after the show post. Obviously, if you ever want to, if you ever just need it real quick, you can hit either one of us up. We can shoot it right over to you so you can take advantage. But let's get back to the timeline, Drew. Here's one from our boy at J Money Jarrett. This is a 12-team Superflex start 10. Would you rather have DJ Moore and Cam Akers, or a random 23 first and Darnell Mooney? I voted on this one, so I want to get your opinion first, Drew. Which side do you like? Do you like the DJ Moore and Cam Akers side, or do you like the random 23 first and the Darnell Mooney side?
I would probably settle for just the 23 first and then add Darnell Mooney. Sure, why not? I'll take him on top. Cam Akers is. I would rather have Darnell Mooney over Cam Akers any given day. I'd rather have the first over DJ Moore at this point.
So I'm with you. I voted on this. I voted for the random 23 first and Mooney. That side lost 57 to 43%. And I really broke it down like you did. I said, would I take a random first for DJ Moore? Absolutely. Would I take Mooney for Cam Akers? Absolutely. I feel like I'm getting the the better side of both of those. So give it to me. And I did a little research this week. DJ Moore. Do you know what wide receiver he is? DJ Moore, wide receiver 24, right? No. Wide receiver 36. He's still a flex play. You could throw him in there. Wide receiver 48. He's a flex in the 3 wide receiver league. No. All right. That's because he's wide receiver 50. And it pains me to say that because I've loved DJ Moore since day one. DJ Moore has, and I try to get him every year, and people love DJ Moore like I love DJ Moore. But at this point, I can't trust Carolina to do anything. They had an opportunity to get a Justin Fields. They didn't. Now, maybe in hindsight, that's going to be a good move because we haven't seen anything from Justin Fields that says, "Hey, this is elite quarterback play." They could have got Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones has been good. He hasn't been elite. He hasn't been a superstar, but he's been good. He's been better than Baker Mayfield. He's been better than the corpse of Cam Newton. He's been better than Kyle Allen. Like, these are the quarterbacks that have thrown to DJ Moore, and I don't even want to list the other ones because it would just depress me. But Carolina seems to have no will to use money or draft picks to get a competent, qualified quarterback in there. And they've been available. I mean, we've seen Russell Wilson move. Now, again, in hindsight, it might not be a bad thing that they skipped on Russ Wilson because right now, Russ can't cook. He's not cooking. He's not even really microwaving. Scissor said it perfectly. Russ can't cook. He's still eating the Geno's pizza rolls he got served week 1.
Terrible.
Geno Smith, who, by the way, is a top 10 fantasy quarterback this season. Him and Jared Goff, they just sitting, kicking their feet up, going, "You remember when people said we couldn't play football? Look at us now. Look at us now." But they haven't even tried. I mean, their big answer this year was to epically fail on Deshaun Watson. And by the way, this wasn't a moral play by them. They were in the hunt and they couldn't get the job done. They haven't used draft picks. I mean, we know now that Kenny Pickett went 20 to the Steelers, but they had a top 10 pick. And even if they valued him as a top 20 guy, they either didn't try or couldn't move down to accumulate more assets and maybe get Kenny Pickett more at like top 10 or top 12. Like, they just haven't. I'm going too long on DJ Moore. I'm sorry about that. But that's what worries me about DJ Moore is that Carolina's just never going to get it right with him. They're never going to get him a quarterback that can actually get him the damn ball. So give me the first and Mooney. I'm sorry for that ramble. It hurts me. It hurts me a lot. Here's our next one here from to Utah at Steve Sanders 600. 12 teams, Superflex Dynasty PPR. Javonte Williams or Damian Priest Priest. Let's try this again. Dameon Pierce. So this is an interesting one. Obviously, if you don't know, I have to break some bad news. Javonte tore every L in his knee. ACL, PCL, LCL, all the
MCL.
L's. All of them. If there's an
LDL.
If there's an L in his knee, it's currently not attached the way it's supposed to be. He's gone for the rest of this season and probably the first few weeks of the 2023 season. So it's kind of, a lot of people have been comparing it to the J.K. Dobbins injury. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to do that, but that's what I've heard other people say. They're comparing it to that injury. So, Drew, what's your headspace on Javonte Williams? if you're looking at this deal, is it Javante or is it Damian Priest? I did it again. Damian Pierce.
Yeah, this is a sad time here for those of us who were riding the Javante train. I am so overweight in Javante across leagues that this hurts a lot in so many places. Which again, I mean, you have to know each year running backs get hurt, right? You just hope that a guy like Javante would keep it together, especially with the limited usage too. Splitting with Mel Gordon and stuff. So I feel bad for him. I hope he gets solid rehab, and hopefully he's able to do everything he can to get back and get right. But if it's a matter of I'm competing right now and I need to fill out my running back, maybe I'm in a league that forces me to start two running backs, and maybe I was a hero RB, right? Maybe it was Javante and then a bunch of Jags. I could see doing this. I mean, Damian Pierce he's an RB2 right now. You could have the hope that he'll blossom to more than that if you believe in the talent. As a Javante stan, as somebody who has so much Javante, I couldn't do this personally. I don't think unless I was really looking at the rest of my team. Maybe I had a surprise guy show up. Maybe Gerald Everett is my tight end 2 or 3, and I'm able to start him in a tight end premium. And I'm getting the points. I'm getting some unexpected points, and I just need to fill out the rest of my roster. I mean, Pierce is a great substitute, and you don't lose any years here. I think typically what you're looking at is you're going to have non-contenders sending older running backs. I don't know, maybe it's a Saquon for a Javante now or something might be a more typical deal you'll get across your offers because Saquon's getting older. But if I'm getting unexpected points elsewhere and I'm still contending strongly, I could see making this deal. I think I would still have to counter to get another piece somewhere, whether it's another a really a deeper running back piece that maybe I just want to get Rex Burkhead with it in case something happens to Damian Pierce, and I just want to have a couple pieces to feel good about being able to have a startable guy each week, even if I get it wrong some weeks. Right? I know Burkhead had a good week this week, but I need something a little bit more. Whether it's another opportunity next year, a third round pick, especially if it's coming from somebody who's trying to shed points. Yeah, give me your early third. I'll take a top 28 pick next year. And like you're saying earlier, Josh, I can package that together, or it won't take much to turn that early third into a mid or late second next year in this class that we really like. But straight up, I have a hard time doing it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Uh, if this deal is sent to me and I have Javante in a lot of places too, um, this is an instant reject from me. Um, unless no, it's just an instant reject for me because even if I'm a contender, right? I can I can make other plans. And I honestly, even if I went hero RB and my heroes are my hero was Javante and I have a lot of other guys, I mean, I think I can keep Javante and I'm looking at, half point PPR again for running backs. What is it going to cost me to get? My name is Jeff Wilson Jr. He's running back 27 right now, which by the way is ahead of where Javante Williams is. Now I know Javante Williams got hurt in that game, blah blah blah, but he was ahead of Javante. Javante coming in at 32 and a half point PPR. So what would it take me to get? My name is Jeff. What would it take me to get? Let's see. Let's scroll a little bit. Damian Harris. What do you think it takes me to get Damian Harris? Damian Harris is 15.
Pay a second.
Yeah. And I keep Javante. And I can look to make a more, in my opinion, a more equitable deal. Listen, Pierce has been good this year. Right now, according to Fantasy Pros, he is RB 14 and a half point PPR. But what is next year going to bring, right? If I'm losing Javante, I know it might be, week 4, 5, 6 in 2023 before Javante is back up and back kind of to what he, but we've seen this, I've heard other people compare this to J.K. Dobbins. We kind of saw J.K. Dobbins do a little something last week. The first
Mhm.
week was kind of the knock the rust off week. It, wasn't pretty. You weren't excited about it. But then we kind of saw J.K. Dobbins back to the J.K. Dobbins that we think we all remembered. And this season will
Mhm.
tell. Again, we're only in week 4. Maybe this was the aberration, and week 3 was what he's really going to be for the rest of the season. But if J.K. Dobbins gets back, you know, we have to wait, you know, a few more weeks for Javante because I think it was 4 or 5 weeks um, later than J.K. Dobbins' injury in the calendar last year. So, you know, if I'm thinking, all right, I've seen this guy, and especially at the end of the year, J.K. Dobbins is back to J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
We're probably going to kind of assume that Javante is going to be back to Javante. And I don't want to give that up for Pierce, who, let's face it, we don't know what Houston is doing. He might end the season at running back 14. They have 2 first-round picks, and the GM gets the bright idea to draft Bijan Robinson with that second first-round pick because they want to sell jerseys. And before you call me crazy, we saw the Jacksonville Jaguars do this last year when they drafted Travis Etienne in the first round when they had James Robinson who was crushing it. So it's not the craziest thing to happen. I don't think Pierce as a 4th round pick, I believe he was,
Mhm.
just has this, no matter what he does, has this just instant built-in security that there's no way that they don't spend money on Melvin Gordon, that they don't spend draft capital on a top 3 or 4 running back in the class. Like we don't, he doesn't have that security. He would have to finish like RB3 almost to be like, all right, well, he's pretty much built in. And I don't think he is going to. So yeah, I would rather keep him and try to get some cheaper options. Give me Jeff Wilson, man. Like, let me pay that second, probably at most, to get a Jeff Wilson
Yeah.
rather than give up a Javante to get Damian Pierce.
Yeah.
So, all right, you know what, Drew? We got one more. You got time for one more?
We can do one more.
I could do one more. Of course, we could do one more. All right, this one here is from Josh Ross at Josh111520. Josh, let's shorten up the numbers a little bit. 6 numbers is a lot. 12-team dynasty. Do you want T. Higgins, Brandon Cooks, and a 23 third? Or Olave, Pickens, and a 24 first? First of all, what are we doing here? Like, doesn't this seem like the most obvious side to pick? Or am I crazy? Because I'm looking at this. Olave has been cooking. Another guy was down on that he seems to be getting work done. George Pickens, who looks like Kenny Pickett's favorite wide receiver after that one half of play, and a 24 first. For T. Higgins, and I get it, T. Higgins is, I couldn't get him in my top 10, but he's 100% top 15. Brandon Cooks, Mr. Reliable, I like to call him. You never think about him, but he's always there when you need him. And a 23 third. I kind of look at it like this. Would I be shocked if Olave was in the top 15 next year? Like ADP? Would it be shocking? if Olave was in there? If he keeps kind of on the pace that he's on? I don't think so. So T. Higgins has a slight advantage, but I feel like in a year's time, that might be neutral. Pickens or Brandon Cooks, everybody's going to pick Pickens. And then a 24 first or a 23 third, obvious.
Yep.
So what do you think here, Drew? Am I missing something?
Yeah, I thought maybe the T Higgins part might draw some more attention there. When I voted on this a few days ago, it was close to maybe 60-40. So
Okay.
the results definitely panned out closer to what I was expecting. Some of it depends on what you think of George Pickens. He's kind of been polarizing depending on who you talk to a little bit. But yeah, I think from when you do the matchup game here, yeah, I mean, I love me some T Higgins, but he's not enough to give up a couple of young guys that look like they're going to turn into something, or again, could be in a similar tier as him a year from now. And you're getting two of them. You know, we love Brandon Cooks, perpetually underrated. Um, but yeah, like you said, if you're talking about Brandon Cooks versus Pickens, you're adding something to Cooks to get to Pickens. And honestly, if the picks were switched, how much different does it make it?
Man, it makes it a little bit closer, but I still
Yeah.
think that over the next 2 to 3 years, the Olave Pickens side is going to outscore the T Higgins Brandon Cook side.
Yeah, it,
Is
it,
it
it
enough
makes
to
it.
drop back 2 rounds? I mean, I think so. I
Yeah,
think it
that's
does.
tough. It's a little tougher when you switch them, but as is, yeah, I think the Olave Pickens and 24 first, and this is the move to do it. If you can make this happen, if you have T Higgins, Brandon Cooks, even if it's a 23rd second, and you can go and parlay that into an Olave Pickens and a 24 first. We've talked about this as a theme for the last few months. You know, unless somebody is just absolutely, you know, dead to the world and doesn't understand where the value is with these 23 first, 24s are the ones to be adding in and lumping in at this point. So yeah, it's pretty easy there. I was just curious, you know, if the T Higgins allure, knowing that you wanted to get him in the top 10, if any of
I
that would
do.
sway you at all.
No, and it didn't, but obviously, T Higgins makes you at least stop and look at it. It makes you go, all right, let me take a look at this. Let me see what I really think about it. But once you kind of take a step back and you really process it logically, T Higgins doesn't make up for everything that you're losing. But I think, and I like that you put this trade on because I said, man, it seems so obvious. But this is the reason why you shouldn't hesitate to offer a trade. Now, I'm not saying offer bad trades because, don't give me, Javante just got hurt. Do you want Jeff Wilson straight up? Like, stop. Nobody's doing that. So don't but this is on its face. You go, man, this is really lopsided. But this is a real contender versus rebuild kind of trade. And if you're a contender, or excuse me, if you're a rebuild, T. Higgins is young. T. Higgins could definitely be on a rebuild. But what's happening with Brandon Cooks? He's going to be that 24 to 28 for the next 2 years. So you got that low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3, and a third. Hey, if you're rebuilding, that third's going to be high in this draft that we all love. So we're talking, 25 to 27 in that range. Okay, that's got some value, not a ton, but some. But you're getting back 2 youngsters. You're getting back Olave. You're getting back Pickens. And you're getting a 24 first, which is just helping with the rebuild. So offer it. What's the worst that can happen? The guy writes you back and goes, look, dude, this is way off, man. Like maybe I could do this and do that and make some switches and make it a trade that we both could agree on. But shoot them out because you never know. Every time I shoot out a trade, I expect it not to get accepted. And it's not because I send out bad trades, it's because I understand that the person on the other side is probably going to do what I do. They're going to look at it, they're going to go, all right, I see where he's coming from. Let's make some tweaks. And then I get it back, and sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool too. Like I like this offer too. And sometimes I go, he's got the right idea, but let's make some tweaks. And each side makes a couple tweaks a couple times, and then you get to a point where both of you go, all right, this is cool. Or you get to a point where a person goes, I just can't do it. It's a little bit too rich for my blood, or I'm not getting enough value back in the situation. And that's fine. You're in a 12-team league. If one person doesn't like a trade, you got 10 more opportunities to try to get something done. And this is what rebuilders should be doing. Like you should know walking into the season you're a rebuilder, and you should just be every week kind of looking towards the top and going, okay, these are the guys that need to pay to win that championship. That's what everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to win. Drew, you like winning, right?
I do. I do,
like
in
winning?
fact.
I like winning. People that play Dynasty with me probably go, yeah, but you don't do it a lot. I get that, but I like winning. So look at the top and go, okay, they like winning too. They wouldn't be playing fantasy if they didn't like winning. It's fun and it's cool to hang out with people and talk with them and shoot the shit and everything. But when the season starts, we're all trying to win, or we're all trying to get our team to where it needs to be. And go, hey, I got a T. Higgins, first, second, third place guys, and I'll give a little. I don't think it's secret, but something that I try to do. I don't actually look at the top 3 teams because their teams are probably pretty good unless someone is just kind of getting lucky with matchups and stuff like that. I like looking at teams like 6 and 7 because they're like, I'm in the playoffs or I'm close to being in the playoffs. I need a little bit something extra. And that's where I try to make the trades happen when I'm a rebuilder, because they have hope. Hope springs eternal, as they say. And those are the guys who are like, all right, like they're looking up at the first, second, third place team and they go, their teams are better than mine. And I go, but what if I can give you this vet that puts up points? Then they look at their team, they look at the vet, they look up at the standings and they go, you know what? This guy could bring me right to the top. And so that's what I try to do. I start in that like 6-7 range and then kind of work my way up if deals don't get made. Hey, if I do a deal with a first place team, that's fine. I don't care if I'm rebuilding. I want to be, I'm trying to shed these old veteran points anyway. So if I can get a good deal from the first place team, that's fine too. But that's what I like to do because I think those teams are looking at it like, all right, I'm like in there or almost in there. This player could bring me, instead of coming in and, being the 6th seed, I could be the 4 seed or the 3 seed. And then anything can happen, right? That's what we always say when we get anything can happen in the playoffs. So that's what I kind of do there. But this was a good question because it did make me think of that, kind of rebuild versus contender aspect of it. But on that note, Drew, we have a question for Drew. I'm going to read this since Drew is the resident Buffalo Bills fan. Question for Drew from Dynasty Scissor. Who's the real wide receiver 2 on the Buffalo Bills? Gabe Davis or Isaiah McKenzie? There is only one right answer, Drew. I hope you know what it is since it's your team. But let's get your answer.
Depends on which metrics you're looking at here. Target share, your target percentage, it looks like McKenzie is outpacing. Routes run, Gabe Davis is running a lot. I think this last week highlighted that, right? A lot of routes run, but not a lot of targets for it. But then you drill down into the quality of the targets. Isaiah McKenzie actually has 3 touchdowns to Gabe Davis's 1. However, the value of the targets that Gabe Davis is getting near or around the red zone, it's hard to turn those down. So for me, I want Gabe Davis in this. If you're going to move Gabe Davis and get Isaiah McKenzie, hopefully you can get a little bit on top if you can build a case for it. Unless you're trading with Josh, who is probably going to ask you to add a little something to Gabe Davis for his Isaiah McKenzie. Hard to go wrong with either guy, and I don't think you're going to pay. I think people are maybe cooling on Gabe Davis a little bit. I know I was pretty excited after week 1, thinking that maybe he was going to solidify that role. It's very fluid, and I think that's the beauty of the Bills' offense is whatever it takes to win. McKenzie has certainly been getting some of the targets, especially after Davis was out for a week. So hard to argue with either one. But for me, I still think Gabe Davis has the edge here.
All right, so Dynasty Scissor, Drew is speaking with his heart here. A lot of heart in what he says. He's wanted Gabe Davis to be a thing because I have slandered the name of Gabe Davis on this show plenty of times. He wants him to be a thing. It's his Buffalo Bill. Isaiah McKenzie. He doesn't have excuses. Man's had to come up from nothing to be the wide receiver 2 on the Buffalo Bills. Gabe Davis is hurt. But Isaiah McKenzie's in concussion protocol. Here's a guy we might be talking about as the real wide receiver 2 at the end of this. Khalil Shakir. Jamison Crowder broke his ankle. That saddens me because I've loved Jamison Crowder for, the 78 years that he's been in the league. Each and every one of those years, I've loved Jamison Crowder. It's unfortunate, but he's not going to be around for the rest of the season. So if the injuries keep piling up in the wide receiver room for the Buffalo Bills, we might be hearing a lot more of Khalil Shakir. And I actually think Khalil Shakir is a good player. So this isn't just like, hey, process of elimination, who's left? Oh, Khalil Shakir, he's the guy. I do think he's a talented player. But just keep an eye on him. Maybe now you want to be a little proactive. What's Khalil Shakir going to cost you? A 3rd and a 4th?
Maybe.
Maybe
Third.
somebody.
Third.
I would start with a 4th and see. That's what someone probably paid for him in a draft. It was probably a 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're just like, cool. Khalil Shakir is like 5th on that depth chart before Jamison Crowder got hurt. You can have him. I'll just reload this 4th for next year. But just a name to keep. And listen, if Gabe Davis comes back and Isaiah McKenzie just kind of breezes through the concussion protocol, Khalil Shakir is probably going to have his 1 or 2 targets a game, and that's going to be it. And it's not going to be fantasy relevant. But here we go. See, that's why Dynasty Scissor is a genius. He's already got Khalil on the taxi squad. Get you some Isaiah McKenzie, the true number 2 of that Bills offense, and have yourself a day. But Drew, this is kind of what I said earlier when I went through my top 10. It's really Stephon Diggs and everybody else.
Yeah.
Who gets open? We saw week 1. There was just a massive defensive failure. Gabe Davis was wide open, walks it in for a touchdown. Same thing happened to Isaiah McKenzie in the same game. Defensive lapse, wide open, walks it in for a touchdown. So obviously those plays are going to happen, especially when you're playing the Bills and they're all at full strength. But it's really Stephon Diggs and whoever else they line up on that specific play. But that's what I think. So Drew goes with Gabe Davis. I'm gonna go with Isaiah McKenzie for life. I'm gonna go for the underdog, especially when the overdog is overrated. And we're gonna do. Oh, I said it. I said what I said. Gabe Davis. Don't at me. So, on that note, let's get out of here. Episode 150 in the books. Drew, it's been a blast doing this with you. And the chat's been a blast, man. A couple congratulations, which is always appreciated by Drew and I. Just a lot of great questions. Dynasty Scissor was like just running the chat. A bunch of great questions. I love it all. And just remember, we saw a lot of people coming in and out. If you're watching this on YouTube, even if you're catching us on the replay afterwards, please subscribe to the DAP Network. There's always stuff going on. It's not just us. It's a lot of other great people doing great things. So you know when all those great things are getting ready to happen. We'd also appreciate it if you hit a like on the video. If you leave a comment, like I said, as soon as this posts, I'm going to leave a comment with our BetUS link so you guys can take advantage of that. Listen, we know 9 o'clock on a Wednesday, it's not for everybody. People have lives, families, jobs, sleep. If you caught us on a podcast, thank you very much for listening all the way through an hour and 30 minutes. It's appreciated. Just remember, if a friend referred us, if you just kind of fell into us, hit subscribe so that you can get us every week. Rate and review if your podcast directory allows you to do that, because that helps the show as well. And we love hearing what y'all have to say. You know, Josh, you're dumb and Drew's really smart. And I'll be like, yeah, I get it. Like, I totally understand that.
Get out of here.
But, you know, everything good and bad, all, you know, it all helps us get better. So, Drew, 150 episodes. Thank you very much. And let's get out of here so we can get ready for 151.
Late. Maybe not.
I hit the button, man. It's just
Encore.
I mean, we